Hey guys, good topic. How to scale when you're feeling wiped out or burnt out or whooped, whatever. I got two good stories. I'm going to give you two examples. These are not painters, but they relate to a painter because if you're a business owner, this is going to pertain to you. I've seen guys post on these boards and groups and whatnot. They're small. They want to increase, but they're not sure what to do or, like how to transition from one or two guys to a couple crews. Okay, so there is a whole lot to cover on this topic. I'm starting with what we have on the screen to go by and two discussions that occurred in the past 30 days with, like I mentioned, two different builders. Okay, so long story short, okay, we're all standing outside, just chit chatting. We have a trim carpenter with one of his employees, and we have a flooring guy who is installing floors, and then myself. And I heard the trim guys saying, the owner of the trim company, the trim carpenter was saying, or no, I'm sorry, it was his employee was saying we could make our own kitchen cabinets and install them. Okay, so just to bring you up to speed, the houses that we typically do, they're box cabinets. So they typically just they're pre-made, and all the trim carpenter has to do is fasten them to the wall, and that's it. So they're not a custom cabinet always. For us, we rarely ever see any cabinets constructed on a job. Typically, those types of like real custom cabinets are made off-site and pretty much brought to the job for the most part assembled. Okay, so the employee has done work for a cabinet shop, a local cabinet shop. So he's got tons of finishing, experience with finishing cabinets and building cabinets. And so he was talking to his boss, like he's saying, you know what, we should just get into the business of making cabinets and then install them. And then he was like listing off all these other things they could be doing as trim carpenters for a builder. And I just jumped right in, and they know the guy I was talking about. I just said, look, if you want to see a working business model of what you're talking about, go see blank. Because what you just described is exactly what that other builder does. And that other builder only builds two houses. The reason they only build two houses is because they try to do the majority of the work themselves. Sort of like what the trim carpenter employee was really suggesting. We're capable of doing a lot more than what we're doing for this particular builder. So, I mean, it's cool that he's looking to kind of upsell himself for his boss, as another avenue to take, to get more work out of the builder, I suppose. But, I've covered this in the past too. I think it was actually one of the first video podcastings like I've done like this. And really it comes down to this. Just because something has a benefit does not mean we should do it. And, that's a perfect example where we have this other builder who only builds two houses a year because it's basically what he does is he has two employees working. So they're helping frame the houses. They're helping with siding, gutters, flooring. They do the painting themselves. Just anything and everything, the cleanup, all of it. They're trying to do it themselves. So because they do all of this work themselves, it takes them forever to build a house. Now, there's some downsides to that, which are going to pertain to painting. Okay, the obvious is that people are impatient to wait 6 months to have a house built. Okay, in the same way that some people are just impatient to wait 2 weeks to have your house painted. So, yeah, this is where when you have an efficiency advantage, you really just smoke everybody out of the water. People will hire you just because you're quicker, because you can get to it faster, something like that. Okay, so the builder that does 2 a year, so his limitations are pretty obvious here. His income is limited because he can only do 2 houses a year. And these are small houses, mind you. These are under 2,000 square feet. And I'm talking like 1,500 square feet. So, but that, this is just what happens when you try to, even though you're capable of doing a lot of different things, you have the skills to put in the flooring, you have the skills to do the siding and gutters and, just a number of other things that go along with building a house. It doesn't mean you should do it, and this is really the point that the trim carpenter, the owner, was trying to tell the, employee. It was funny because he pretty much already knew what that leads to, with building the cabinets and, because now this is going to take a lot longer. It's like we're already here for one whole week, me and you trimming these houses. And now you're suggesting that we build the boxes and then assemble them, So, the trim carpenter pretty much shot that idea down. And I only suggested the other builder as an example because they both knew the other builder. And we all chuckled. So, that... Let's just talk about that other builder. Okay, the guy who's doing 2 a year. Now, he cannot scale his business using his current business model. Okay, so if he wants to go from 2 to 4 houses, obviously he has to change some things. And they need to be pretty drastic changes. And what that's going to really come down to is giving up some of the things that the 2 guys are actually doing. Because the builder himself doesn't actually work. I actually took a picture of him painting a front rail system on the exterior of a house back in 1993, but that's really the only time I've ever seen that guy actually work. Okay, just so you know what we're talking about. Okay, so he has 2 guys that have been with him forever who do the work for him. So it's just those 2. And, they're really limited to what they can do. They're not experts really in any of it. So, if you only do 2 houses a year, you can see how long your experience would take to get you so much experience compared to somebody who's doing 20 a year. You see what I mean? Somebody who's pumping out houses much more frequently every month, you just have a whole different mindset and everything. Everything is different. Okay, so this builder cannot scale until he gives up something. So what he's really going to need to do is hire trades. Maybe it's going to be the painting aspect of it, because we're going to be looking at what are some large things that are consuming our time. Like flooring is a good one. I know they like to do their own flooring, and that includes really kind of, I don't think they like to do, excuse me, ceramic, but they'll do everything else. Hardwood, just linoleum, all of the other stuff that comes with it. Okay, and they also trim their own houses. On occasion he'll call me to come in and paint them, but for the most part they try to do all of it, put the trim up, paint it all themselves. Like the brush and roller style, they don't spray. So they're very much like old school stuff, and none of it's really a good finish or anything. It's just the house is just painted. Is really probably the best way to explain it. Okay, now I'm going to give you another example. Okay, in the previous video, I was talking about a builder who is retired of 40 years, who has helped other people get into building houses, so they can too become builders. Okay, and what he has done, this builder of 40 years, is put together a system for these new people getting into the business. Essentially, it's a roadmap to success. And all the person needs to do is actually follow the system. But what he's found is that these people don't want to follow the system in the same way that I find painters don't want to follow my systems. And, that's going to hurt them in the same way it's going to hurt you when you take a system of mine and you think that you can alter it, because what you don't know, what is completely hidden from you, is how that system came to be in the first place. It, in his case, has 40 years of experience behind his. I have 30 behind mine. Now, I'm always saying the number of years that you're in business is no measure of anything, unless what you do during that 30 or 40 years actually matters. So in my case, in the builder's case, we kind of treated our businesses a little bit different than the average Joe. In my case, I kind of researched the shit out of it. I tested, benchmarked, measured everything in the same way that he did. Okay, most people don't do that stuff. Okay, so we're going to have a really different perspective. So in a sense, he studied the whole business of building a home in the same way that I studied the idea of painting a home. Okay, all right, so this guy's got money. He's the guy I always talk about. He's got $50 million in the bank, and he's free to help people get into the business. He's all about here. I wrote a big article about this guy. Okay, for success to him is helping others. Okay, that's it. It's plain and simple. Success to a lot of other people is a big house, a bunch of cars, a vacation home, all this materialistic shit. Like vacations, all this fucking nonsense. Okay, for him and myself, success is helping others. So in case you're unaware, I have been helping painters for 20 years. And for the most part, I really don't charge for it. Okay, just so you know where my head is and where his head is. We're very much alike in that area. Okay, so he's helping these people. He's going to be like, here, buddy, here's $2 million. Here is the system on how to make this X amount of money in a year. Okay, here are the blueprints. Here is the house that sells the most. And instead of going through the banks, you're going to go through me, and I'm going to charge you interest on the $2 million. Okay, here you go. Here's a check. Okay, now all you have to do is follow the directions. And in the end of that, you're building a popular home that will sell and has, the guy's sold tons of this particular house model style. So he knows, he's like, this is really how I made my millions, selling that fucking house, that he doesn't even care for, but people do. It's kind of like, okay, so you have to keep this in mind that when you're in business, you have to be able to go beyond what you like to do and prefer to do. I've said this so many times about painting. People will be like, but I like a purdy brush, or I prefer to use a purdy. You have to drop the damn bad habits and move on to something better. Okay. Everybody likes to say, yeah, the brush is a personal preference. You know what? It's personally going to limit your performance. That's what it's going to do. It is, in a sense, what that says is I prefer not to make a lot of money by using this brush, because you don't know any better what a better brush is. So that's why you continue to use the brush. Okay, so it's the same with this builder. It's just like, you have to get your head around the idea that the dude already has 50 million in the bank and he did something right to get there. Okay, so all you have to do is follow the damn directions. He's giving you $2 million to do it, but you got to pay him back, on the loan. But okay, so here's what happens. The people that this builder has helped are not following the directions, and they're coming up short. Okay, now he's going, look, I want you guys to scale. He's helping a couple guys do exactly what I'm telling you. He's like, I want you guys to scale. Okay, so that he's making more money. Obviously, the more he loans these two other guys, the more he makes. Okay, and he's retired. He doesn't even really give a shit. I don't even know why he does it. He's just not happy with 50 million in the bank. It's got to be more. So, but here I'm sharing this story because I want you to understand his experience is exactly the same as mine working with painters. I will lay out the system for you. You will not follow it. I don't know what's wrong with you that you won't, but you won't. Okay, I'm making light of it. Okay, I'm making a joke of it, but I mean it's true. It's truly that way. Okay, so you're going to take basically what this builder gave you, this plan, the model, a house and you're going to change it. You're going to fuck something up so that you don't get your number at the end of the year. And that's exactly what happens. Okay, I mean, look, just be aware of it because it is so important. When I say, we need to understand how to paint and do things and whatnot, all this nonsense. What I'm saying is that we have to, from my perspective, do things a certain way to achieve a certain result. Okay, let's just use the 6-minute room as an example again. It's just such a great video because it's really the epitome of what I'm talking about. Okay, so if we follow the steps and use the products that are seen in the video, in theory, you should be able to achieve the same result. Now, here's what's going to happen. You may go and purchase all 9 of those products, and you may learn and train yourself to paint exactly that way that I did in the video. But what's going to happen is that you're not going to be really quick at it in the beginning. It's going to take, much longer than 6 minutes. It might take you a whole hour. But as long as you consistently do exactly the same thing in the video over and over and over for every single room that you paint for the next 12 months, you will become faster at it. Look, I've been painting 30 years. I didn't initially start painting rooms in 6 minutes. That just came a few years ago, so but then again, I was never even trying to do that particular thing. I just got a bug up my ass one day, and I just wondered what the hell one of these systems is capable of doing, and that's just what I came up with. It was like, well, bam, there it is. Okay, it's just one of the many things that you could do with, systems. So no matter what it is that you're trying to do in your business, build a house, paint a house, a system is going to be your roadmap to actually achieving the result. And, I mentioned in the previous video today or the other day about, oh shit, I lost my train of thought. I keep doing that because I'm looking at 2 monitors. I got too much shit going on and my phone's going off. Yeah, hell, I'm going to have to let that one go. Let me see. I'm looking at my notes. Okay. Well, I covered all, I covered everything on my notes. No, here's one. Okay, here's one I'm going to say. Okay, we're talking about the systems for scaling and whatnot, and how you're going to have to learn to do things beyond what you prefer to do. I gave you the example that the builder sold X number of houses and it was his best seller. So what you're going to want to do is, build this exact same house, how he did it, and, price it right. And that, damn, just lost my monitor. And then in the end, you're going to have this profit. Hold on, I can't type. Okay, so, all right, now back on the topic of the systems. Now I want this to be really clear to you guys. Now there are other people talking about the word system. They use it, but the way I kind of perceive their knowledge of a system is nowhere anything at all like what I'm talking about with the system. I think people just maybe it's just been used so much, and more people are talking about systems. It's kind of like they feel left out if they're not mentioning the word system. But anyway, so there are other people to have systems in place, and they're going to tell you could be for scaling your business, you could be highly profitable, but that is going to be, their systems are going to like really put you into niche markets, and my systems allow you to be highly profitable in any market, including saturated markets. That's just the beauty of it. So where the other guys, they're forced out of these markets because they need to have their numbers so high to meet that profit that they want. I'm taking basically what I've done is completely undermine that whole idea. Okay, so that allows you to be in these saturated markets, be highly competitive with the hacks if you want to be, and you could still come away, with money in the bank. And then you could just change your numbers as you move through different market segments. I mean, different clients, different level of clients or whatever. It's the same way like where you build a house and it has to be cheaper in some neighborhoods, and you could build the exact same house and charge double in another neighborhood. It's the same shit, same principle. Okay, so let me think. I gotta get my head around this whole thing. I've so much shit I've been doing all day long today about talking about this kind of stuff, systems and habits and whatnot. Okay, so let's not forget to answer the question: how to scale when you're wiped out. Okay, all right. Now the builder that we're talking about here, not the guy, not the one that does the two houses, but the one that's being backed by the retired builder. He's burned out, but the guy with the money's telling him he needs to scale. So what is he going to do? How does he do it? Okay, well, what we need to do is we need to look at what's keeping him from scaling. Hey, wow, that's, genius, isn't it? I mean, who would have thought? Okay, but that's as simple as it is. We need to look at what is taking his time right now. What is keeping him from scaling and what is actually causing him to burn out. Okay, and that's real simple because when you don't have systems in place to do shit, you burn yourself out really quickly because you're kind of just like running around like a madman. All you're trying to do is put out fires all the damn time. You're working long hours, you're working the weekends, like Saturday and Sunday are regular work days to you. That is going to burn your ass so fast you won't be able to scale. Okay, so the thing that's preventing him from scaling is the thing that he lacks the most, the system. So once we have the system in place that will allow him to not keep working on Saturdays and Sundays and practically 16-hour days to keep up. And I mean, the guy's not even like busy, I mean, if you're building 6 houses or less a year, you're not busy, dude. I mean, you're just not. If you were doing one a month, now you're doing a little bit better. I'm talking about like on a small builder scale. But even at 12, that's not good. You know what I mean? You should, how about we shoot for 2 a month? So the guy with the money is saying for every house that you close, you should have one in the ground. And that ain't happening because there's 12 months in the year. Okay, do the math. All right, but he's burned out anyway. All right, so he has to make changes. He has to look at what is consuming the most time, just like the first builder I talked about with the 2 houses a year. He has to forfeit something, even though he has some benefit with having his hands in on it. This is where we have to look at things and just know, my time could be spent better elsewhere. I would be better off hiring somebody to do this, whatever I'm doing, so I don't have to work on the weekend, because you have to look at it like when you're building houses, the more, you build that's a pretty good chunk of money that you profit right there, especially if you don't have realtor fees, which are going to also be a sizable amount that's going to have to get paid to somebody. But if you can sell them yourself because you're on the job site so damn much and you just, you're running into the new homeowners all the time, you're saving all that money. So we're always just going to have to look at each individual thing as painters to determine if this is really something that we should be doing. Is this a system that we should be engaged with? Or is this a product that we should be using? Or is this sprayer something that's holding us back? That kind of thing. Like I had a discussion earlier today about somebody who had tried one of the Graco handhelds. And he's talking about how like it's just a shitty sprayer. And I'd said, well, yeah, it was a shitty sprayer when I prototyped it fucking years ago. And obviously, the guy, I just watched a video of some guy spraying a door flat on sawhorses and the damn thing kept, I don't know, spitting or you could just, it was like my experience all over again. I'm like, really? Damn. I mean, how many like revisions have they made to that sprayer? And it seems to be exactly like it was when it was a prototype. You know what? I'm like, dude, just go buy a new sprayer, like a real one, because that little handheld's holding you back, I sent him some links or whatever, some past articles that had written on the time difference, there. And, because he just talked about, like, well, what if I only need to do some small jobs? So I was thinking just get a small airless, but just have an airless, that kind of thing. All right, and that's just another example. It's just like you can't allow products to hold you up anywhere along this path. You know what I mean? Because that is the kind of stuff when it just accumulates on you prevents you from scaling to where you want to be, or where you could be. It's just kind of like you get sucked into this world where you're just working so much and you can't think, you can't scale, you're wiped out, and that keeps you from thinking clearly about what you should be doing. It's always going to fall back on systems, really a lack of them. It was like the article I posted the other day. The guy's been a painter for 8 months, and he's like, I'm going a few days over on my jobs, and I have to call the customer that I have scheduled next and tell them I got to push you out a few days because I went over. Look, when you're 8 months in, look what just happened. You have, number one, your first client disappointed because you didn't finish when you said you were going to, and you have your second client, which you're supposed to go to afterwards, pushed out. The dude's lucky the other, the client that's up next didn't just say, never mind, we're going to get somebody else. If you have to get this in your head, if referrals is the goal here, you ought to be doing some shit to make sure you get them. And I suggest not disappointing people. All right, guys. Lots to think about there. Play this one again. Like I don't script anything out. I make a couple notes and I just run through them. And they're usually attached to some story from somewhere. Blah, blah, blah. All right, guys. I got to go.